Well, the Ottawa Food Bank says it's been forced to turn away volunteers because there's not enough food donations to sort. This comes as they're seeing record levels of demand. The organization's member food banks are on track to reach a record 500,000 visitors this year, while they had over 400,000 visits last year. Rachel Wilson is CEO of the Ottawa Food Bank. Thank you so much for coming into studio.
Thank you for having me.
So give us a sense of just how much donations have been drying up.
We have seen a decrease in about 30% of our donated food. And in the last month alone, it's been down 16%. So these are numbers we've never seen before in our existence. We've been around for 40 years now. And losing this amount of food has been really devastating for our organization.
Tell me what you know about why you're seeing fewer donations.
We know that there's a lot of factors. Some of it is that people are finally being able to travel and enjoy their vacations. We know that food is incredibly expensive. So when people go out to a grocery store, picking up a few extra items for the Ottawa Food Bank is really challenging to do. So we know that times are tough for everyone in our city, not just those who are accessing food banks.
Okay. And what does it mean when you see that kind of dry up of donations for the people who are dependent on these services? Because as we just heard, the demand is increasing while the donations are drying up.
It is critical to ensure that people still have access to food. So unfortunately, our organization is spending millions of dollars on food. So last month alone, we spent $960,000 just to make sure we had the right food, fresh food, and all the food that's needed for the community. And to give you a sense, before the pandemic, our total annual budget was $1.6 million. So we're spending that almost every single month.
Every single month.
It's incredible. It's both the cost of food right now, but it's also the number of people who are accessing food banks. We're seeing more people, and we're seeing people having to come 2, 3, 4 times a month just to make ends meet.
If you could take us into the food bank right now, what is it like? Tell me about a conversation or a moment, something you would want people to see to really understand. Like those are stunning numbers, but I think numbers can sometimes seem abstract to people.
It's really important that people understand these are people, these are families, these are individuals. We are seeing people from every walk of life, every community, old, young, women, men. These are people and these are our neighbors, and we need to be supporting them. But unfortunately, this falls to the community in order to make ends meet and help their neighbors.
And tell me about the conversation with the volunteers. I don't know that you were there, but what happened when you said to them, like, you want to help? Not today.
We have the most incredible and dedicated volunteers. Over 3,000 people give us their time every single year to help our organization. So when we have to turn people away who are willing to give their time, it's really heartbreaking to have to do that. We know many of them understood, but many of them are sad that they're not able to support the organization. But they're still committed to us and are willing to come back as soon as that food comes in through the door.
Have you had moments like this before at the food bank?
We typically see the summer months get a little bit quieter because people are away, but nothing like what we're seeing right now. As I said, a 30% drop in the amount of food donations we've received really impacts our organization.
When you went public, letting people know that you had to turn your volunteers away, there was an outpouring of support. I know you got one big donation from the Ottawa Senators Community Foundation. How do you feel about the footing that you're on right now?
When I was in the warehouse today, unfortunately, there are still very empty shelves. We are able to take donations like the Ottawa Senators Foundation gift and turn it into food right away. So we go out to our partners and we say, what is the best price you can give us on things? And we start to buy those items, and they literally come in and go right back out the door. So our shelves are still quite empty, even though the need continues to be so high. So we really do continue to push and ask for people to support, both with money and with food.
We know that this is not a situation that is unique to the Ottawa Food Bank. For instance, right here on Power and Politics, we spoke to the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank, talked about hours-long waits to access services, donation shortages we know elsewhere in the country. Tell me about this moment that we are finding ourselves in right now in terms of the access to food for Canadians who need it.
Food banks across the country are experiencing the same things that we are here. Unprecedented historical levels of people needing to turn to a food bank. Some cities are seeing a 50% increase. We've seen a 37% increase. These are numbers we've just never seen before. But more importantly, we're seeing people who have jobs, who have houses, who just cannot afford to live in cities like Toronto and Ottawa. This is not about people who are it's not a moral failure by any means. This is really about people not having access to funds they need in order to support their families or themselves. It's a critical time for our organization, a critical time for the country.
And so we always want to talk about solutions, trying to address these problems. What kinds of supports from governments, for instance, would help?
Unfortunately, organizations like ours are almost completely funded by the community, for the community. We are 99% funded by the community, and that's similar for food banks right across the country. We don't necessarily need, one-off Band-Aid solutions. We need long-term supports, and that's going to be things like basic income, social assistance rates that keep pace with the cost of living, and affordable housing is a critical issue in our city, and it really is connected and driving food insecurity. You can't miss a mortgage payment or rent payment or even your utilities. It's much easier to miss a meal, and that's the first thing that will go for people who are struggling.
We've talked a lot, particularly this week on the program, about the housing crisis and sort of the political discussion around the housing crisis. What would you say to political leaders about trying to resolve it, or certainly at least improve the situation?
It really does take an investment, but it takes an investment now, and it is a long-term process. This is really about building legacy, and what kind of legacy do these politicians want to have about how they have left the country? And investments in affordable housing will have long-term impacts for food banks, for people right across the country. So it is critical that we make those important investments.
Do you feel like there is an openness now at this moment with so much public attention turned to the question of housing?
We're really hoping that that is the case. We really struggle with conversations at all level, making it a nonpartisan issue, making sure every level of government is playing an active role. They're challenging conversations right now, and we know there's a lot at play and there's complex issues here, but it requires government to do more and to step up and own this issue, particular food insecurity, which really is not owned by anyone.
You say challenging conversations, and I think we can all appreciate that it's a really challenging issue, but I wonder ultimately where the resistance is. Like, what is the biggest sort of hurdle you run into when you say we need more affordable housing?
It's about investment and it's about money. And governments are struggling to find where those extra dollars are coming from. We know here in the city it's really challenging. In the province, I know there are other priorities, and it's always about choosing which priority to focus on now. We need it to be on housing and on food insecurity to make sure that the community, those people most in need, are thriving and doing well. It has long-term outcomes, and we know the cost of poverty is high, so make the investment today.
Okay.